I know that cops have a difficult job. George Floyd was murdered. I know that being a cop is dangerous. George Floyd was murdered. I know that most cops are good. George Floyd was murdered. I understand that cops generally serve and protect. George Floyd was murdered. I get that riots are dangerous and cause damage to businesses. George Floyd was murdered. I'm not anti-police. George Floyd was murdered. We bring you the show today on Hot Sauce Sports. All of us with heavy hearts because of what's going on around us. It's going to be difficult. We're going to try to be the distraction that we are for you guys. It's a sports comedy show. It's just hard to find what's funny on a week like this. My wife's family came from Colombia. They left a country that was overrun by a drug lord and then settling into North America. My wife often tells a story about how she felt that she was luckier than her siblings because she looked white and she sounded white. All of this growing up in Atlanta and then moving to Montreal, both cities besieged by riots, being burned to the ground in some cases, and yet we see acts of criminal injustice still being carried out. My background, myself, my brother, Eagles family, came from a country where our grandparents escaped fascism. And I know on my part, my grandfather often talked about the importance of freedom, and I grew up understanding the dangers of divisive politics. The politics now divide us from the media, sow the seeds of distrust, and we do our best on our end to try and give you the information as we see it, and we do it in a way that we can be as supportive as possible. We're in Montreal, in the province of Quebec. Francois Legault, our prime minister, our premier, claimed that there isn't institutional racism. He was elected on the platform of divisive politics. He created claims that made no sense at the time and still make no sense, as he claimed that immigrants were stealing all of our jobs and using up all of our welfare. If that seems incongruous, it is. And when he was elected, he passed a law violating basic human rights of religious freedom. In our cities, I know for a fact, we have friends and people we know who have been racially profiled and have been pulled over by police officers to check their documents. This is something I've never experienced in my life. This is something I know Terry's never experienced in his life. This is something Eagle's never experienced in his life. They have been accused of things. They've been pushed around by police officers. Again, while I understand this isn't the norm, this is not most police officers. Most police officers do their job and are above board, but this isn't the case in all scenarios, and those are the scenarios that need to be listened to. There's protest because people haven't been listening. We don't condone violence and looting, but we do support human life. People are dying, and largely they want you to recognize it and they want you to listen. No freedom is given without protest. Unfortunately, protest isn't always convenient. I grew up privileged. However, when people have told me that they're in pain, I listen. When people tell me that Black Lives Matter, I don't argue that all lives matter, because what they're saying is Black lives also matter, not that Black lives matter more. They just matter in addition to the lives that already do, that already are given that right. For our hot sauce contributors who are feeling marginalized, we feel your pain and we're with you. We support you. To our friends of the show that have been on the show, we support you. We're going to do our best to get you on in the next short little while. We've already started recording a lot of interviews with you so you can tell your stories and we can share them. To people in our community, know that despite you feeling the sense of loneliness, you aren't actually alone. Loneliness is the weapon of divisive politics, and it's the greatest defense for us to stand together. I'm Pease, this is Terry. This is Alex, who's sitting in for Duke. Alex, sorry for throwing you into the fire on perhaps the toughest episode we've had to record to date. Eagle, of course, joins us from the studio. Guys, this is a tough time. I looking through my timeline trying to get stories for today, it wasn't easy because obviously the stories that matter most are the stories that of the minorities that are experiencing this. And we're going to cover this through the prism of sports, and then we'll lighten things up a little bit because we do want to offer the distraction to people who most need us to be that distraction. But first of all, boys, you heard a lot about me going on and on and on about how I'm doing, but how are you guys doing? How are you doing, Terry?
I've been good, man. Just like looking at my my blacked out social media feeds all day, and watching the videos of all the riots and everybody going crazy, and seeing a president who doesn't know how to speak to his people, and it's just it's been interesting. But I've been having a good day nonetheless. I think in Montreal, in Canada, we're a little bit more fortunate than in the States, so I'm good, man. I watch and I watched Akeem's video. I watched Shaquille Finn's video, and I posted on our stories. And um, everything you said was right, Pease. I mean, I can't say anything. I mean, as much as I'm against the looting, I
And
understand.
so that's the thing, is nobody's pro looting.
Yeah,
What
no,
we're
that's what I'm
saying
saying.
is people are angry. We need to pay attention.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. So as much as I'm against the looting, is like there's a reason to why something's happening. There's a reason why somebody goes crazy and drives his car at 150 kilometers an hour after leaving work because he's frustrated with his job, or there's something that's triggering something right there, right? So it's something to look at. I mean, I'm completely against the looting. I think everybody else is too, but there's a reason why it's happening.
Absolutely. Alex, you're joining us. You're our newest social media intern. So intern Alex is how we'll forever refer to you. Even when you're no longer an intern and full-time staff, we will always refer to you as intern Alex because we are dicks. Intern Alex, you're actually in California. You've experienced a lot of the protests and stuff firsthand. How's it going for you?
I've actually been to the first ever protest here in town, in Bakersfield. I felt like the protest was peaceful at first. Well, it started peaceful, like it went great. Me and my wife went there. She took pictures of the protest. Overall, it was a pretty nice experience. I've never been to a protest before, so yeah, I liked it. I liked the cause. I feel like it was justified. I obviously do not condone the looting. I feel like those are just people taking advantage of the situation. Um, and yeah, overall, it was a pretty good experience.
I think we should say that Alex isn't in Montreal with us. He's from Montreal, but he lives in Bakersfield, California. So
literally how we introduced him, Terry.
oh, sorry, my mistake. I take it out my headphones for half a second here.
Eagle, how's your day been?
I mean, like Terry said, it's been a little bit weird and everything. For a lot of the stuff that's going on, I mean, in a way, I'm happy it's finally coming out because it's something we all kind of knew in the back of our hearts that this was going on, but it kind of felt like, well, it's just how things are, and it's not bothering us, so we're not going to deal with it. And
it'll get better with time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't need to deal with that or whatever, but I'm happy that it's more, like, mainstream at this point now, right? Like, we all knew this was the thing nobody wanted to talk about for obvious reasons, and I'm happy that it's finally getting the attention it deserves.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed that's different this time around is that a lot of the in a lot of the protests, you actually see a lot of white people there. It does seem as though people are more understanding this time around. Maybe it's the 8-minute and 46-second video of a man dying and being murdered in front of us, with 3 other police officers watching as it happened. You know, they just because of how visceral and how graphic that is.
One of which is a visible minority.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing too. Is just, you know, systemically how it is that the protocols are created and how they're desensitized and how they see, you know, who are police officers, who aren't police officers, and unfortunately, the cost of that at times is human life, and that's definitely something that needs to be addressed over time.
Yeah.
But look, we see guys in different leagues. We see it being handled across the prism of sports. The NFL put out a statement, and I was talking to our contributor Brett Botkin, who's a writer here at Hot Sauce Sports. He was actually at the Montreal protest, and as we were talking, I remember at one point I just said, the thing with the NFL statement is, fuck you. You had a chance to make a statement 3 years ago, but with that guy kneeling down, that was a huge issue. That was a big problem for the NFL. Something they couldn't get behind. All these billionaires with all the FU money in the world couldn't take a stand and get behind it. Instead, they all acted like cowards, scared of their paycheck.
Imagine if Mike Pence wasn't so furious with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee that he didn't have to leave a football game, and to 3 years later, come out and say, there's peaceful protests is a way to get your message across.
I mean, yeah, but that's the thing, is they keep moving the yardstick, Terry. So like peaceful protest is fine. Well, they tried it didn't work. Well, why don't you go through the legal system? People are trying and it's not working. And then this protest is not the way. Well, then what's the way? You know what? How about
there's a time and place. Give me the time and place.
Not to mention that, like, when Karens are protesting that they can't get their nails done, this is a protest that's being supported by the President of the United States.
Because it's not dangerous. I get that, but it's like, it gets to a point
where
it
is dangerous. In it, you think that, because again,
you mean when they brought assault rifles to the parliaments and everything? And
well, that's just their Second Amendment right, Eagle.
Of course. What about the First Amendment right? That's why there's an order on them.
That's a good point.
And all of this happening amidst a global pandemic where we're largely scared to be in public with other people. Yet this is so important. People have taken to the streets. And my God, what does worry me and all this is, the coronavirus doesn't care about race or protest. It's a killer of people of all sorts of varieties. I'm hoping that this doesn't lead to a second wave, which we'll only know the impacts of this in about 2 weeks' time. That said, this is a cause that definitely is worth people feeling the pressures and the risks. One person who still doesn't understand Colin Kaepernick's kneeling is Drew Brees, who came out with a statement saying he still doesn't understand disrespecting the flag. Here's what I don't understand: how do you continue to phrase it as disrespecting the flag?
But also, Drew Brees took a knee the week after Colin Kaepernick took a knee. So what side are you on? And is there a time and place to figure out where, what you have to, how you have to react and look around you and look at maybe 65% of your team as African American, and maybe they think differently. And Drew Brees is such a team guy normally, and I think he's never been disliked across the league. Maybe some people find him annoying with his pregame speeches and stuff, but for the most part, Drew Brees has been a good guy and good messages, positive all the time. And I don't think he meant anything bad with this. I just think that it's you don't understand the reason to why Kaepernick actually took a knee. For me, I wasn't there. It took me probably 2 days to figure it out. I was like, why is he taking a knee? What's the whole point of this, And then I finally figured it out. Whatever. Drew Brees, it's been 3 years. He was your colleague, we'll say. You figure it out. And now Michael Thomas, his own receiver, is coming out against him on Twitter.
Well, and that's the thing is, the worst part about it is that they're working in an environment that has a lot of black people. There's a lot of minorities that play football. And for you to not understand the plight of your own colleagues, I don't you've had to have conversations with them about this in the last 3 years. It's been in NFL circles for so long. How are you still blind to see this? I don't understand that.
It's so tough for me to see guys not rally around their colleagues and their supposed brothers. You know what I mean? Every athlete always talks about how, the locker room was the thing they're going to miss the most. And they became brothers with all these guys and they went to battle with them. And, it's one thing. And social media is so big now to the point where the president had to tell people to stop using it because his facts were being proven wrong. And that is so big now that even the president has to come out and talk about social media, and every message that he sends is through social media. And now your voice is so big. You have 2 million people minimum that are going to follow you and listen to your message, and you come out and say something like, I don't understand people disrespecting the flag. Who's been disrespecting the flag in all of this? Who has burned a flag? Well, I don't know. I haven't seen a video of a flag being burnt.
But especially,
I'm sure there has been.
You hear guys like Greg Popovich, who comes from the
Yeah.
military family, Steve Kerr, who I believe his family is tied to the military as well.
Yes.
And they say it's not a disrespect to the military. And look, I'm not going to tell other people how to feel about things. You can absolutely say that you feel offended by it. Fine, that's cool. You're offended by it. That's cool. That said, you still need to listen to why he's protesting. You still all you need to do is, it costs you nothing. All you need to do is listen.
So I was listening to a podcast by the CEO of Barstool, Erica Nardini. She's really smart. I like listening to her, and she has an episode called Listen, and she was talking to Willie Colon, who played in the NFL, and she says, my job today is to just sit back and listen. And Willie Colon talked about his experience and how he was driving one time. Willie Colon, he's an NFL player, he's a monster, and how he was driving through Tennessee on a road trip with his wife, going to San Francisco to watch a Super Bowl. It's a thing they do every year, and he gets pulled over, and the cop said he pulled him over because he'd never seen somebody drive the way he drove. So he said he changed his stance while he was driving, and that's why he got pulled over. He looked suspicious by changing the way he sat. So Willie Colon's like, regardless of if the guy was a racist or not, these are things that I've had to deal with my entire life growing up in New York City. So he's like, so people just don't understand that aspect. Is like, we've swallowed it. I've had to like tell my kids how to talk to cops. Arian Foster also had talked about how his father taught him how to speak to police and how to listen to everything they say, because they're in control in that moment and you have no control.
Terry, like we even see stories coming out now of NCAA coaches taking time out of their practices to sorry, Alexa's going off in the corner. I don't know why. But they're taking time out of their practices to teach their players how to interact when you're dealing with police officers.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because, again, I know for myself that this wasn't ever a worry for me growing up.
Yeah.
Charlie, that I would imagine same for you and same for you, Eagle.
Mean, when a cop's behind me and I'm driving, my first thing is I'm thinking like, okay, was I on my phone? Because I usually am. And that's the first thing I'm thinking about.
See, what I'm usually thinking of is, my God, my driver better be sober.
And what I'm usually thinking is, thank God I'm sober, because Pete is probably nervous right now.
Oh, yeah. Listen, it's tough life. But yeah, so in the midst of all that, we then see one of the biggest franchises in sports, despite being completely incompetent. They're rewarded constantly for their incompetence. They take one more incompetent step as James Dolan and the Knicks do not come out with a statement, despite most of your workforce, most of the important people in your workforce being black.
Not only that, is that they come out with a statement defending why they didn't come out with a statement.
And that's the thing you want to defend. That's
yeah.
And the worst is that all of these statements don't even say, they never mention police, they never mention cops. Mm-hmm. And again, like, are you saying that the police have such a fragile ego that they can't recognize that this guy, who's clearly a bad guy, he had 18 previous situations that he had mishandled, and he was using racial profiling. You know this was a bad cop, so you're defending bad cops too? That's more important to you than human life.
It's not just that.
The organization can't even say that's a bad cop.
So this is the opposite spectrum. Okay, obviously it happened in Minneapolis. The Minnesota Vikings, the first thing what they did was they released a statement, and the second thing they did was they removed their contract to hire police officers, Minneapolis police officers, for security. That's a huge money for them, for the police department. So they're not going to hire. They're going to go private. They're going to hire a private security company, probably pay more money. And these Minneapolis police officers, they're not going to get the overtime, but they're not going to be able to get this extra money. Police officers, they make decent money, but for the most part, most of their money's been made through overtime. Yeah. And overtime and going to these events. It's not just working your 9 to 5, 11 to 7, whatever beat route they're doing. A lot of these cops, they make their money through overtime and working at these events. So for the Minneapolis Police Department to come out and say, Minnesota Vikings, for them to say, we're not going to hire you guys anymore, fix something. That's the biggest statement you can make.
Yeah.
As an organization, you don't have to come and say, fuck the cops, fuck the police, whatever it is. Just say, we need something needs to change. This is what we're going to do to change it. And that's it.
I even saw some people saying that you should go to the extreme and you should stop sending your kids to Division I schools to try and really like hurt the money books and everything, right? But I think
I also
yeah, it's more career suicide in the process. But
Wait,
I also
Eagle,
saw-
are you saying that Division One athletics is a business and it would affect their business?
yes,
I
Really?
think
exactly what I'm saying.
I think Pease makes an anti-NCAA comment every episode. And this is
It's the
episode
thing that bothers me
65,
most.
66? This is
Yeah, I
episode
made at least
65 or
66
66, and
references.
I think that it's you've made a comment every single episode, which is great. I love it.
It's like in the show Psych. There's a pineapple in every episode.
Okay.
That the NCAA is my pineapple.
It's your pineapple.
Terry, you shared a couple of stories coming from what I thought to be surprising sources. The NHL has had some pretty interesting statements with regard to what happened. Jonathan Toews was
Specific
the one-
players, yeah.
That was awesome. The way it was approached by him, I thought that was really interesting.
There's been
So I'll
a
let you
couple.
talk about it since that was your story.
Yeah, so there's been a couple. So Jonathan Taves came out saying how, listen, he lived in a white privileged life and whatever it is. But also, Blake Wheeler came out to keep in mind.
Shea Weber.
Sorry, Shea Weber?
Yeah, Shea Weber came out and said
I don't even know.
he came from a small town in British Columbia
Mhm.
and how he didn't understand how the rest of the world were living until he was in that environment himself.
I haven't seen PK Subban come out. I mean, I'm sure he has. He's
Also, I
very
actually have
vocal.
a story on that, but I'll let you do it. And I'll,
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
he made a
so-
huge donation. So
He did, okay. So Jonathan Taves came out. Blake Wheeler came out. Jonathan Taves is from Winnipeg. Winnipeg is the most, and I mean the most, racist city in Canada.
Been
towards-
there, can
towards
confirm.
towards native Canadians, I say.
Really?
So
that's even a thing I forgot to mention that I prepared too, is the treatment of natives. And you're
Yeah.
saying there's no systemic racism in Quebec or Canada.
and not only that, Blake Wheeler came out also talking about it, and he plays for Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So these guys live in this area. They know what it's like, right? They've seen it, and they still talk about their privilege and how they've grown up without having to worry about anything. And I find it's good on specific players. I don't ask the NHL to come out with something because the NHL is predominantly a white sport. For the 25 players that they have that are African American or whatever it is, I don't know the number exactly, for them to come out and say something, that's great. But I like that the fact that all these individual players who have a platform are going to use it. Paul Bissonnette came out and talked because he's a quarter black. A lot of guys come out and they know how to use their platform. But if it's for the guys who don't say anything, if you're not going to say anything, that's fine. Nobody's asking you to say anything. I mean, I haven't said anything because I just don't know what to say. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I took some time to sort of make it on our behalf, because we've had conversations about this for the last couple of days. Basically, it's all we've been talking about. So
Yeah.
I kind of sort of synthesized our thoughts and put it into the intro of the show. The PK Subban, Terry, I know you asked about it. He actually donated $50,000, and that's being matched by the NHL.
Nice.
So I mean, like, he is doing something. And this is something I talked about when I interviewed the guys from Paving the Way. When I said that Michael Jordan gets a lot of heat for his comment that Republicans buy sneakers too, but that we only ever put the pressure on black athletes to support black causes. But there's no black causes, no white causes, there's no gay causes. They're human causes, and the same pressure should be put on Drew Brees to support it as Colin Kaepernick. The same pressure should be put on Tom Brady as is put on Michael Jordan, as is put on LeBron James. Because if the only people that care about it are the people most affected, this never changes.
Never changes. It has to be. But that's the thing is also there was also this big thing, not now, but this big thing where if you're somebody that if you're white and you overly defend black people on social media, you're hated on, okay, by both sides. Okay, it was a thing. Now that's stopped completely. Everybody sees everybody supporting, and that's great. But at the end of the day, I know that a guy like Drew Brees is going to come out and do the right thing because from what we've seen up until this moment, he hasn't really done anything wrong. All he said was, "I don't want to disrespect the flag." Whereas comments mistimed, I guess, fine. But realistically, we know Drew Brees is a good guy and he'll come out and
keep
say
making it about the flag. If you keep making it about the military, then the message, the actual protest is lost. You know what I mean? So
But even in my I'll give you an example. Even in my group chat with my friends, is that we spoke about the Drew Brees thing, and one of my friends said it was like, why, like he doesn't really have to come out and say anything. You know what I mean? Like, and they're more of there shouldn't be any violence, no looting, no riots, none of that stuff.
But
And
no,
so am I.
that's the thing is like I love how that's the two sides.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It should
There
be.
could be looting. The
Yeah.
thing is, I can understand I can understand why violence breaks out. Unfortunately, sometimes it's also misappropriated. Another thing, I don't know if you've noticed, Terry, but in my newsfeed, most of the looters have been white.
Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Listen, I know that Trump goes against Antifa. I'm completely against like a group like Antifa. To me, they're a terrorist organization. They only show up when the bad things happen. They're never there in the positive moments. So there's groups like that that come out and do the bad shit. It's not, if you looked at Montreal, okay, Brent was telling us, if you look at Montreal and the protest here, it was so quiet because Antifa really doesn't exist here. But there's Antifa signs everywhere. There's Antifa signs all over the place. They're the problem. It's not the people that were walking down the streets, like the cop in Michigan, in Flint, Michigan, that said, "I don't want to make this a protest. I want to make it a parade." Like things like that. Like that's what we want. We don't want all these other groups coming in just because they're anti-establishment, you know? And that's the problem. All these messages get mixed up with politics. This isn't a political issue. It's a human rights issue and a human right that everybody deserves to have.
It shouldn't be a controversial take where we say innocent people shouldn't be murdered in the street. And I don't see anything controversial about that, right? But somehow it's still being politicized. Liverpool and Chelsea, two of the English Premier teams, and soccer has had, unfortunately, a history of racism that we has been talked about by players constantly. But it's kind of cool to see two of the more storied clubs take a stand.
There's a reason why a lot of black players don't like to go play in Italy, because they get bananas thrown at them. And in Greece, the same thing. They get bananas thrown at them. And so for team, and I'm a Liverpool fan, and that team, there's their star player is Muslim. Their next best player, he's from Senegal. So for them, they live a different experience. And soccer is the most, it's the most popular sport worldwide for a reason, because it unites everybody, right? The World Cup is the most watched event in the world because it unites everybody for a 4-week span, whatever it is. And for Liverpool and Chelsea to come out and do something like that, it just shows that it's not, we're not ignoring it. That's the whole thing, is you don't have to come out and say something, but you don't have to ignore it either.
Yeah, exactly. And like we started the show with, all people are saying is you just have to listen. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is going to be tough because, like, all these things were topical over the last week. It just seems so far from the mark. But I do want to talk about it because it does affect Montreal sports specifically. And while the show isn't necessarily just a local show, we are Montrealers. We're proud Montrealers. We love the city of Montreal. And I know, Terry, perhaps there are no two greater Expos fans than the two guys who are on this show week in, week out. David Sampson was on Dan Levitard's Local Hour, and I happened to catch the episode. And I was being interviewed by the host, who's one of the producers of the Levitard show, Mike Ryan. And he talked about his time as the executive vice president of the Montreal Expos. And some stuff was interesting. It's always, I don't want to say he's dishonest, because it doesn't appear to be that. I will say some of this stuff seemed disingenuous. Yeah. I think it was very clear to me, even though I was fairly young, that Loria was not interested in keeping the team here. Bud Selig hated having teams in Canada. The Montreal fan base was torn apart after the lockout season in 1994, where we were absolutely going to win the World Series. Terry, there was, how many, between 1979 and 1999, I'm sorry, 1994, the strike season, do you know how many losing seasons the Expos had in the time they were in Olympic Stadium until
you know what? I read the book Up and Away by Jonah Carey.
Yeah,
and he mentions it, and I don't have the answer.
They had 3 losing seasons.
They were good, man, for that time. Yeah,
franchise that drew decently, and I think a championship would really help them. You know that in Montreal, especially, so I know that Canada gets a reputation for being cold, but Montreal is a warm city in the summer. It's city with a lot of beautiful people. We don't want to be kept in a gray, dark dome unless you're very good. So absolutely support a winner. We were betrayed by the richest owners in baseball. And David Sampson does mention that. He did say, he did talk about how he felt as though the media was anti-Semitic. And again, I'm not going to tell other people how to feel. I will say that all I remember was you were hated because you wanted to move the team away.
I remember, and I was an Expos fan. I wasn't a huge baseball fan back then. I used to go to games with my dad and my brother every once in a while. We'd always end up in left field and we'd yell at Bobby Abreu, just to get him off when he was playing for the Phillies. I think that's like a thing that Montreal fans do. It's like everybody's like, oh, I used to yell at Bobby Abreu.
Yeah.
So,
natural, like we had a lot of rivalries, but it was just something about the Phillies, man.
Something about the Phillies. And I remember like throwing O. Henry bars when Henry Rodriguez would hit a home run, and so little things like that I remember. So I wasn't a huge baseball fan, but I was an Expos fan, and I enjoyed going to baseball games. I still do. So I remember that when they bought the team, and then they moved to the Olympic Stadium was a lot earlier than that. But when they bought the team, I noticed the Olympic Stadium started becoming a garbage dump.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that, and it was like known that the team would move, and it was 4 years before they actually moved, and people would say, "Oh yeah, eventually the Expos are gonna leave," and so I'm like, in my head, I was like, it was a grain in my head. Like I already knew it was gonna happen, and then when it finally happened, I was like, it's sad, but I knew it was gonna happen. It's kind of like you're expecting somebody, like when you have an older sick relative. It's kind of like you're just waiting for it to happen kind of thing. And then it ended up happening, which is sad because Montreal is a huge baseball fan base. We still do to this day.
And the thing is that like Montreal now isn't what it used to be. Montreal summers are the best thing in the world. There's so many festivals.
It's the best. There's no city better in the summer in North America than Montreal. The amount of festivals we have.
We have a 4-month party that starts in May and ends in September. It's awesome. It's like if the Expos would have had a stadium like they're planning to, if they move the team back, it's going to be in Griffintown. It's going to be more downtown amidst the party. It's going to be part of that party scene.
Yeah.
And it just sucks that Loria and Sampson didn't have that vision. Perhaps that vision would have been helped by actually living in the city and not commuting from New York City. Terry, he actually did address trying to move the team to New Jersey early on, which is interesting.
Yeah, because that's what that area needs. The tri-state area needs another baseball team.
Yeah, the Mets and Yankees are never going to let that happen.
No.
Talked about a ridiculous RICO lawsuit that was filed by the other owners, saying that it was them and the mob that hadn't moved the team because they wanted to just disassociate from any guilt. But they did take Marlins World Series rings and all sorts of money that did come with the sale of that team. The other part of it is he didn't mention, however, that they were sued by the Minnesota Twins because that move is like for Major League Baseball to buy a team from you and then move that team to Washington is not the best business practice. And that was a lawsuit that Major League Baseball did lose to the Minnesota.
This is also another reason why I'm an anti-Blue Jays guy, because they voted for Montreal to not have a team, right? There was a vote that was passed, and do you vote at the relocation of Montreal? And Toronto voted yes because they wanted all Canadian dollar to come to them, and it was a smart business move. But at the end of the day, it screwed over a good franchise and a good fan base.
And this was after the TV money was already all going to the Blue Jays.
Exactly, yeah. So they really they monopolized it, and then they just said they kicked away the small guy because the Expos, the only TV money they were getting was really from RDS, and RDS is only Quebec and basically only Montreal because people in Quebec City aren't really baseball fans. I don't think we're getting a lot of outsiders from Quebec coming to Montreal to go to the Olympic Stadium in the east end of Montreal, where there's basically only soccer that's being played.
Yeah,
and it's unfortunate because, but if they do come back, and I hope they do, I will be a season ticket holder for sure.
We're getting hot sauce season tickets, 100%, 100%. There was something else that broke, and I wanted to talk about the funny part of it. But then, of course, it turned sort of bad yesterday. And this is Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports. There's a funny story involving him, so I do want to address that. Mm-hmm. And then there's a negative story that broke a couple days later, and we'll address that as well. Firstly, he bid $250,000 on an experience where he would watch a game with Roger Goodell. It's for charity, which I thought was brilliant. He won the bid.
Of
There's a
course.
famous feud between Barstool Sports and the NFL.
Yeah.
The NFL had members of Barstool Sports arrested during
Super Bowl.
the Super Bowl. So that's kind of entertaining. The NFL then said, you know what? We don't need your money to charity. We're going to donate that money and cancel the experience. And it's just like the whole thing of like, you're the big, powerful NFL, and you're scared of Barstool Sports. That's such a terrible look.
It's because Portnoy is like he's at a different speed than everybody else, right? He just goes at 100 miles an hour, and everybody else, if you're in his way, he's running over you. And Roger Goodell has gone in his way too many times. He got in his way with the whole Deflate Gate, where Portnoy and a couple of his employees, they showed up at the NFL commissioner's office demanding to speak to Goodell. They handcuffed themselves in the lobby. They ended up getting arrested. Then he sneaks into the Super Bowl, gets kicked out. The Barstool employees snuck into a media day last year, were followed. They got kicked out because they were recognized. So it's amazing. The ultimate troll move. He bids the most money.
Yeah.
He probably made more money on that, more money selling the T-shirts with Roger Goodell and the clown nose.
Mhm.
The shirt that they have, he probably made more money just selling those T-shirts than he did on the actual bid. So for him, he's like, I'm going to donate this money to charity. It was supposed to go to like autism or an autism foundation or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what. So that's why he comes out and he's like, yeah, Roger Goodell hates kids. Things like that. Like he does it. He just does whatever he wants.
But that's the thing. It seems so weird to me that the NFL is so short-sighted that they don't see. Like, there's got to be someone telling Goodell, look, you're only making him more popular.
Also, if you acknowledge his existence, you give him more of a voice, I find.
Yeah.
So I think Goodell is doing the right thing, just kind of trying to ignore him, but he's never going to stop. You know?
But they kicked him out. They kicked him out of a game, the Super Bowl, where he bought a ticket as a fan.
Oh, I thought he snuck in.
No, that was what's his name? PFT commenter and someone else had snuck.
They snuck into the media day, yeah.
But he actually bought a ticket to the game and was removed from the game because it started getting out on Twitter that he was there.
Yeah.
You know, like it just like you don't need to stoop that low. You're the NFL. You don't need to do that. You know
I think that he wasn't allowed to be in the building, but he bought a ticket. So
Yeah.
it was a legal, like he bought the ticket was valid, but because they didn't want him there, they said Dave Portnoy is not allowed to be in the building, and they found him and they kicked him out.
But all it does is give him and Barstool more attention.
Exactly, yeah.
We're talking about it, so you know what I mean?
Yep.
The other side of this is, and while I don't completely disagree, sorry, my phone's in somewhere.
Nice
Jesus,
package.
it's been a disaster.
Nice package.
While thanks, by the way, Terry, I do appreciate that. While I do agree with parts of what Dave Portnoy was saying yesterday, I do think it was ill-timed and sort of some bad optics. He was saying that he didn't understand why the whole thing behind Blackout Tuesday and why it was a black in everyone's feed, and so on and so forth. I will say most people misuse Blackout Tuesday. You're not supposed to shut off social media and just post a black picture. You're supposed to be using Blackout Tuesday to not pursue your own brand, but to help elevate the brand of minorities that are affected.
Exactly.
And we did that. Like you said, Terry, we posted some of the voices of people that was more important than our own.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to be doing so in the next couple of days. But he was saying that posting a black square doesn't help anyone. And then he started going on and on about how Barstool should continue just making regular content, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing on Blackout Tuesday. So not a particularly good look for Portnoy.
Oh, I mean, the thing is that Portnoy speaks right off the dome. Like he doesn't really, it's not that he doesn't think, he's a very well thought out person, but his messages sometimes they come construed. I can't defend him for kind of bashing it, but I do understand where he's coming from. It's like, what's this message doing for us? He's a very to the point kind of guy, black and white kind of guy. So it's like, what's this message getting us? And, sometimes he also talks a lot. And when you talk a lot, he's on like 4 different shows. He's always on Twitter. Like he talks a lot. So when you talk so much, chances are your words are going to get construed at some point. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you might even contradict yourself. I know I've done it. I have contradicted myself a couple times, just doing 3 shows a week or whatever it is, and talking about something. I'm like, wait, did I say something different on the last episode? Like, so you just might not think what you're saying is valid, but to him, I mean, to his credit, he also comes out and he's also a voice of a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine if you were the Barstool Sports social media manager, like having to deal, like he's like, okay, tweet about this. Oh no, tweet about that. Okay, no, tweet about this. No, I didn't say that. Okay, say this. No, tweet about this. Okay, fuck Roger Goodell.
I will say my initial reaction, not seeing we had a black square, was, "Oh, I'm gonna fire our goddamn social media intern."
Yeah.
So Alex,
Crazy, first of all, and I'd quit.
sorry.
The guy quit.
I'd quit and go crazy.
Well, but I almost fired you yesterday for not posting a black square, and then I did the research and was like, "No, we're doing the right thing. We're doing the right." So, second, you were
Wait, what did we post?
to almost confident.
What did we do?
We posted some stories.
We turn our logo to black.
Oh, okay, that. Okay, yeah, okay. I was wondering because I didn't see a black square on
That's
our thing.
all we did. Oh man, you're like this close to getting fired, man.
We put our logo black and white, and we posted all the stories of all the contributors that we've had in the last since we started.
All right, fine. That's
that
a little bit
actually have a
better.
voice,
You're on
yeah.
probation. You're not fired, but
We posted voices. We didn't post just empty pictures.
Yeah, which, again, that's what the day is supposed to be about anyway. Alex, this is your time to shine. We've done the bulk of the stories, and now it's time for rapid fire. Eagle, make some gun sounds.
Intern Alex.
No, do it. Come on.
no, I'm not making gun sounds. That's really bad.
Phew, phew.
Out of all the sounds we're gonna make, it should not be gun sounds.
It's true. Make just general fire sound. There we go.
So, but I wanted to say before we get to rapid fire, to your point, I just realized it is that Alex, our intern Alex, is Armenian. Okay, his background is Armenian. Armenia has been known, like, even though if you look at our screen right now, there's 4 squares, right? We have all of us are white, right? Yeah. So I have a Greek background. Alex has an Armenian background. We've both been targeted by the same country to wipe us out completely. You know what I mean? So there's that battle that it happened in the past and it's going to get better, but something needs to happen in order for it to change. And I think that when you talked about your grandparents living in Italy and living under basically a dictatorship of Mussolini, something big needs to happen in order for it to change. And I think we're finally seeing it.
Yeah, and
that's all I want to say.
It's good to see that people are finally recognizing. But now we transition to rapid fire. There's no way I could have done that. Thank you, Terry, for giving me the impossible job of transitioning from racism into.
I finally did it.
In this segment, Alex will read to us some stories of the week, and this is where we finally get a chance to fill our lives with a little bit of laughter as we try to distract and bring a little bit of joy to your lives. Alex, you got to read the title and then read the story. It's in the script.
Story number
you
1.
Do something.
Amid the protests and rioting in Seattle, Washington, and
So the story is called "Treat Yourself."
Oh yeah, that's how it's called. Treat yourself.
Yeah, you have to say the title. So you're making a very common mistake here, but Duke's made this mistake.
I love
65 episodes.
Actually, you know what? I think he's doing better than Duke. Honestly.
Yeah, right. You've automatically done better than Duke. We know you.
Is Duke contagious?
Duke is contagious. He's very contagious to me. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Alex. Treat yourself.
Now, with 2 college students who had a harrowing experience during protests.
Hold on a second.
What's that video?
Oh yeah, I was clicking on the link you sent.
Oh, that's for your own reference, so you know what you're talking about.
A masked woman calmly stole a cheesecake, and it was captured in a magical clip.
You guys saw this?
Yeah, I saw this. This is awesome. I didn't know she stole it first. I thought she was just carrying an uncovered cheesecake through a riot.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, yo, like, I gotta give it to her. That chick wants some cake. Like, I don't support looting, but if you're gonna steal something, why not get a cheesecake?
I mean, it was gonna go bad anyways, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, you're just doing a service.
Yeah. Yo, who can say no to cheesecakes?
Nobody.
Next, feel it in your bones. So, an unlucky vandal had a terrifying run-in when he was stopped with a can of spray paint in his hands.
Oh yeah, you guys saw this?
Yeah, I saw that. Well, why don't you give the background, Terry?
So in Albuquerque, there was Antifa was all over Albuquerque, and Albuquerque is I think you have a I think it's like Arizona where you have a right to carry a concealed weapon. So these guys were spray painting everywhere, and John Jones shows up. Everybody knows who John Jones is. Probably the best fighter in the world, the one guy that nobody in the world would ever want to fuck with. All of 6'4", all of 220 pounds, jacked with a gun because it's a right to carry and conceal. And he shows up and he's like, "Give me the spray paint. Just give me the spray paint." And those guys literally shat their pants, as they should, and they gave him the spray paint. And that's how you end vandalism. Just ask John Jones to show up.
Well, so that's the thing. So I saw that. I saw that, Terry, and I was like, just imagine being that dude. Just imagine you're like, you know what? I'm gonna tag up this minivan, and instead when hitting your pants because John Bon Jones approaches you. Maybe that's what we need in Montreal. We need George St. Pierre to be patrolling the city.
But no, George St. Pierre's too nice. He's way too fucking nice. John Jones is a prick.
Jack Finn. He's also too nice. God damn it. Ariel Helwani, too nice. God damn it.
Ariel Helwani, I don't know if he can't fight his way out of a wet paper bag.
Oof.
But he's a good guy.
We'd like to get him on the show, though. So
eventually. Next.
Story number 3.
Eagle.
I did it. You missed it. You chose.
Yeah, I heard it.
Do it again.
Do it again, Eagle. There you go, Alex. That's your cue.
All right, story number 3. Baskin's whining flavor.
Winning.
After spending nearly $2.5 million to an assets totaling $1 million, Carol Baskins now owns the Whiny Woods, Oklahoma private zoo that once belonged to Joe Exotic.
No fucking way.
Yeah, she won.
First of all,
after it was extended in court by about 3 years, but in that time, who was that creep that was that
Jeff Lowe?
Sorry,
Jeff Lowe.
Yeah, Jeff Lowe opened another zoo in Oklahoma, moving all of the most important assets to that zoo. My God, all of these people are the greasiest things I've ever seen.
Alex, what were you saying?
Okay, so my initial reaction is Carol fucking Baskin. Okay.
Is there? And then more.
I'm sorry, I had to say it. I just had to say it, man.
Carol
God damn, Carol Baskin.
This just goes to prove that she did, in fact, kill her husband.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, this is the
never
proof.
been proof that winning a zoo in a lawsuit.
Next, Eagle.
I did it.
Stop playing Pokemon, you fuck,
I
man.
did it. I fucking here. Ready?
There we go.
All right.
Fourth.
Rapid fire number 4. One Direction. J.R. Smith may have run toward the wrong basket in the NBA Finals, but he knew exactly where his car was when he saw someone breaking in. Boys, thoughts?
So the thing about J.R. Smith is that he actually heard helicopters over his house. And he went outside and he saw there was a protest. So he joined the protest. He got water for everybody. He brought food. He took pictures. You know, he did the whole thing. He joined the protest. And as he's going home, the protest started getting closer to his house. And some guys tried to freaking break into his car. So he beat the shit out of the guy.
And people don't realize how big basketball players are because they look slender because of just how ridiculously tall they are.
Yeah, like Steve Nash looks tiny, but he's 6'3", you know?
Yeah, and he's just, like basketball players are jacked because that's the only sport where you need to consume 12,000 calories a day just to stay alive, basically.
Yeah.
May 31st is now officially J.R. Smith Day.
For two reasons. For this
and his fuck up during
the finals.
The finals.
I would argue the opposite, Alex. I would say that given how trash J.R. Smith was and how shirtless he was during the parade, every day is J.R. Smith Day.
That's a good point.
I agree.
We heard this, Amigo. Well done.
Next.
And the last one, the after hours. While people looted all sorts of valuables these gents made off with a mannequin. Boys, what was going on here?
So I actually told you to post this one. I couldn't find the video, but there's a video of a guy walking into a store. I don't know what kind of store it was, but anyway, he's stealing the mannequin. But the funniest part about the video is not the guy stealing the mannequin. It's that the guy recording is like, "Are you stealing a mannequin?"
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny though. The mannequin's probably the most expensive part of the store you
Yeah.
can steal. Like fuck the clothes and shoes and shit. Take the mannequin, man. That's
But there's
worth
been
money.
so many funny videos with these looters. One of them, it was a van store. They're breaking in, and there's one window everybody's coming out of, and there's two cops walking towards it, just like we're not going to get involved. Just we want to make sure nobody gets hurt, kind of thing. And then one guy runs out with like six boxes of shoes. He turns
sees
right, he sees the cops, he drops them all, takes off the other way. There's another girl. She stops her car in the middle of the road to run in and get some Nikes. One guy in Montreal, he stole. I don't know if it was Montreal or not. Actually, it's a good question. But he stole a cop, like a horse, like a police officer horse.
Oh,
No.
Yeah, and he started recording
Nah.
himself on the horse. Yeah,
The dude stealing the mannequin. Is there any
mannequin.
the mannequin? Is there any other sign of our times in a protest after self-isolation of a dude stealing a mannequin, clearly because he misses sex?
All right, there you go. That's your punchline.
Thank you, Eagle. Thank you, intern Alex, for showing up. That was terrible reading, but I loved it. Eagle,
But no, you channeled your inner Duke.
yeah, you were the most Duke of all time.
Yeah.
We've learned something today in that there's a little Duke in all of us. Thank you, Terry, for everything you've done. Thank you all. And remember, you've
been listening to Hot Sauce Sports.
I did it.
Nice. Hot Sauce Sports, that's us. Remember to watch, like, and subscribe. It's a thing I always forget to say. Feels like a producer should remind me.
Like, subscribe.
Follow.
So,